Clara had always imagined that blending families would be a smooth, gentle process, that the awkward introductions and small adjustments would fade quickly, but she had underestimated how fragile relationships could be and how quickly a single, unexpected moment could throw everything into a whirlwind of emotions. And that morning started like any other, with the sunlight spilling through the curtains of the cozy living room, painting the floor in warm streaks of gold, and Clara had just finished tidying up, arranging the cushions, and straightening the scattered magazines when she noticed Ethan, her stepson, carrying a pile of laundry, moving quietly across the room as if trying not to be noticed, and she felt that familiar mix of affection and anxiety because he was still adjusting to this new household, to the idea of her being a part of his life in a meaningful way. And yet today, something was different. Ethan froze mid-step, holding a small piece of clothing that Clara instantly recognized as private, and for a split second, the room seemed to shrink, the walls pressing in with the weight of embarrassment and the knowledge that this simple accident could change the atmosphere between them forever. And Clara's heart pounded in her chest as she struggled to think of what to say, how to explain without making him feel awkward, without shaming him, because she knew he hadn't intended to invade privacy, yet the air was thick with tension, and she felt her cheeks flush as she remembered all the little things that made her worry about stepping into this blended family, the delicate balance of trust, respect, and understanding that had to be maintained for them all to live together peacefully. And Ethan's wide eyes met hers, an unspoken apology in their depth, and Clara realized that words weren't enough to ease the embarrassment that had filled the room, that a gesture, a look, even a silent acknowledgement might do more to heal the moment than anything she could say. And she opened her mouth, but before any words could form, the sudden sound of the doorbell rang through the house, sharp and startling, and they both jumped, the laundry slipping slightly from Ethan's hands and fluttering to the floor. And Clara felt a rush of relief mixed with curiosity as she walked to the door, wondering who could possibly be visiting at this hour, what news, what interruption would arrive to break the tension. And Ethan stood in the background, still holding a piece of the dropped laundry, his shoulders stiff, eyes flicking between Clara and the door as if trying to hide the lingering awkwardness, and she called to him, softly, "It's nothing, Ethan. Just go put the laundry away, we'll talk later." But he hesitated, caught between obeying her and processing his own feelings, the embarrassment, the confusion, the strange mixture of curiosity and concern that Clara had come to recognize in him. And as she opened the door, a gust of cool air swept in, carrying with it the scent of rain and the faint aroma of the neighbor's freshly baked bread, and a man stood there, smiling awkwardly, holding a small package, and Clara thanked him quickly, accepting the delivery, feeling a flicker of normalcy in the mundane transaction. Yet she knew the tension in the house hadn't dissipated, that it lingered like a shadow in the corners of the room. And Ethan slowly returned to the living room, dropping the remaining laundry in a neat pile, but avoiding her gaze, and Clara felt a pang of empathy for him, remembering herself at his age, the confusion of emotions, the embarrassment of private moments being unexpectedly exposed. And she realized how delicate this family structure was, how easily trust could be shaken, and how important it was to handle every situation with patience, understanding, and care. And so she decided, silently, to approach him gently, to let him know that mistakes were human, that no one was judging, that what mattered most was the honesty and the willingness to communicate openly. And as she sat down on the couch, motioning for him to join her, Ethan slowly walked over, hesitating at the edge of the seat, hands clasped nervously, and Clara smiled softly, the warmth in her eyes intended to reassure him, to show that this small incident wouldn't define their relationship, and that she was there to guide, to support, to help him feel comfortable in this new family dynamic. And Ethan exhaled slowly, the tension in his shoulders easing slightly, and he finally sat down, the faintest trace of a smile appearing on his lips, as if acknowledging her silent message that everything would be okay. And Clara felt a surge of hope that despite the awkwardness, despite the misstep, they could navigate this moment, learn from it, and grow closer, forming a bond built on trust and empathy. And she began to speak softly, carefully, explaining that everyone has moments they wish they could take back, moments of embarrassment, and that what mattered most was understanding and respecting each other's feelings, that boundaries were important but mistakes didn't have to ruin relationships. And Ethan listened intently, nodding occasionally, the muscles in his face relaxing as he absorbed her words, and the sunlight shifted across the room, casting new shadows, highlighting the small, tender connection forming between them, and Clara realized that this moment, though uncomfortable, was also an opportunity to teach, to bond, and to show that love, patience, and understanding could turn a potentially awkward situation into a moment of growth and emotional intimacy. And as the clock ticked quietly in the background, they both felt a strange mixture of relief, lingering tension, and the quiet promise that their relationship could withstand minor embarrassments, that honesty and communication could strengthen their connection. And just as Clara felt that the air had finally begun to clear, Ethan's phone buzzed on the table. A reminder that the outside world was waiting, that life continued beyond this living room, and they shared a glance, a silent acknowledgement that they had crossed a small hurdle together, that the bond between stepson and stepmother had deepened slightly. And as Ethan got up to answer the call, Clara stayed seated, feeling a mixture of pride, love, and cautious hope, knowing that the next conversation, the next shared moment, would continue to shape their relationship. And the morning sunlight, still streaming through the curtains, seemed to illuminate not just the room, but the possibilities ahead, the chance for understanding, connection, and perhaps, in time, a quiet, unspoken affection that was built on respect, care, and the gentle unfolding of emotions. And even though this was only the first awkward encounter, Clara knew in her heart that the family she was building, with all its imperfections, could become something profoundly meaningful, a place where mistakes were forgiven, feelings were acknowledged, and every small, tender moment was a stepping stone toward a deeper, lasting bond. The evening settled quietly over Clara's home, the golden light fading into a soft twilight that draped the rooms in calm shades of blue and gray, and Clara found herself standing in the kitchen, stirring a pot of tea, the steam curling gently into the air, while outside the rain tapped lightly against the windows, a soothing rhythm that seemed to mirror the nervous tension still lingering in the house after the morning's awkward incident with Ethan. And she felt her chest tighten slightly at the thought of the conversation she knew they needed to have, the honest discussion that would bridge the fragile gap between embarrassment and understanding. And she could hear Ethan's footsteps approaching, soft but deliberate, the sound making her heart beat faster as she wondered how he had processed the morning, how he was feeling now. And when he finally entered, she noticed the way he shifted uneasily from one foot to the other, eyes cast downward, hands clasped together as if holding on to something invisible for comfort. And Clara's heart softened at the sight, knowing this young man was struggling with emotions too complex for his years, a mix of guilt, confusion, and the tentative curiosity that always seemed to accompany the unfamiliar. And she gestured gently to the chair across from her, the invitation quiet but sincere. "Sit, Ethan. Let's talk for a minute," she said, her voice calm, soothing, a steady anchor in the emotional storm. And he hesitated, eyes flicking up to meet hers briefly before nodding and moving slowly, carefully, as if each step required permission and courage. And once seated, he stared at the floor, then at the table, then back at her, a flurry of thoughts hidden behind his gaze. And Clara poured 2 cups of tea, handing one to him, the warmth radiating not just from the cup but from her intention, a silent reassurance that this was a safe space, a moment where judgment was suspended. And as Ethan took the cup with both hands, she noticed the tremor in his fingers, the small sigh as he exhaled slowly, finally speaking in a low, hesitant voice. "I didn't mean for this to happen. I didn't mean to see what I saw. I just," and his voice faltered, trailing off into the soft hum of the rain. And Clara reached across the table, lightly touching his hand, feeling the tension there, the unspoken fear that this incident might have changed everything between them. And she said gently, "It's okay, Ethan. You didn't do anything wrong. Everyone makes mistakes. What matters is that we talk about them and learn from them." There was a pause, a long, quiet moment where the room seemed to shrink around them, the tea forgotten, the only sound the patter of rain outside. And Ethan's eyes met hers, vulnerability and relief mingling in the deep brown of his gaze. And Clara felt a wave of empathy and affection wash over her, recognizing not just the embarrassment of the moment but the deeper humanity in it, the way mistakes revealed our fears, desires, and the need for connection. And she continued, her voice soft but steady, "I know it was uncomfortable, and I understand how it felt. But you can trust me. You can be honest with me, and I'll always listen." His shoulders relaxed slightly, the tension easing as he absorbed her words, and he nodded, murmuring, "Thank you. I was scared. I thought I'd ruined everything." Clara's lips curved into a gentle smile, the warmth of understanding filling the space between them, and she leaned back, letting the silence settle, letting him process, knowing that rushing would undo the fragile trust being rebuilt, and as the tea cooled in their hands, she observed him quietly, noticing the subtle changes in his posture, the way his fingers wrapped more loosely around the cup, the way his breathing had slowed, the subtle signs of relief and release that came with being heard without judgment, and she thought about the challenges of their blended family, the delicate balance of respect, care, and emotional honesty that needed to be maintained, and she realized that moments like these, though uncomfortable, were the building blocks of deeper understanding and lasting bonds, teaching both of them about empathy, patience, and the courage to face difficult emotions together. And Ethan, encouraged by her calm presence, finally spoke again, his voice steadier, more certain. "I feel better now. I think I understand why it's important to talk, not just hide things or be embarrassed." Clara nodded, her eyes glistening slightly, touched by his honesty and the emotional growth she could see unfolding before her, and she responded, "Exactly. Life is full of awkward moments, mistakes, and misunderstandings, but each one is an opportunity to connect, to grow, and to strengthen the trust between us." They shared a quiet smile, the first genuine one of the evening, and Clara felt a mixture of relief and pride, knowing that this small incident, which had seemed so overwhelming earlier, had instead opened the door to something meaningful, a chance to nurture a bond that was honest, tender, and resilient. And as the rain continued to fall outside, a soft rhythm that mirrored the calm now settling within, Ethan reached for the tea again, sipping slowly, and Clara noticed how he seemed more at ease, his gaze lifting to meet hers with a newfound courage and understanding, and she realized that the awkwardness of the morning was already fading into memory, replaced by a quiet respect and a shared sense of trust, and the warmth in the kitchen, the gentle light of the lamp, and the sound of the rain combined to create a moment that felt suspended in time, a pause in the chaos of life where clarity, honesty, and connection could take root. And she spoke once more, her voice carrying both reassurance and subtle affection. "Ethan, remember, nothing we experience is ever too big to handle together. Even the moments that scare us the most can teach us something valuable about ourselves and each other." And he nodded slowly, absorbing every word, a small smile tugging at the corners of his lips, a sign that he felt seen, understood, and supported. And Clara, in that moment, felt an unexpected surge of emotion, a mixture of tenderness, admiration, and a quiet affection for the young man who was learning to navigate emotions with honesty and courage. And she knew that this evening, this simple, heartfelt conversation, would mark a turning point in their relationship, one that would allow them to communicate more openly, to share their feelings without fear, and to grow closer in a way that was both respectful and deeply human. And as the last drops of rain slid down the windowpane, a sense of calm and connection settled over the kitchen, a feeling that despite the awkwardness, despite the mistakes, love and understanding had the power to transform even the most uncomfortable moments into opportunities for growth. And Ethan finally set down his cup, looking at Clara with an expression that combined gratitude, relief, and a tentative trust, and she returned the look with a soft smile, feeling a quiet pride in the strength and resilience of their bond, knowing that the evening had turned a potentially painful memory into a shared experience of learning, empathy, and connection. And as the darkness of night fully embraced the house, they sat together in companionable silence, hearts a little lighter, tensions eased, and the unspoken promise between them that honesty, patience, and care would guide their relationship moving forward, creating a foundation strong enough to face whatever challenges lay ahead, knowing that this moment, simple yet profound, had changed them both in ways that neither could have predicted but both would carry with them into the days to come. The days that followed felt both heavy and fragile, as though the air around Clara's home carried the weight of unspoken emotions and the tender tension of a bond still forming. And she noticed every small change in Ethan, from the way he lingered a little longer when passing through the room to the subtle hesitations in his words when speaking with her. And it both worried and fascinated her because she could see that the incident with the laundry, awkward as it had been, had sparked something deeper in him, a quiet vulnerability that made him more introspective, more aware of his feelings, and Clara, though careful not to let her emotions run ahead of reason, found herself thinking of him often, recalling the softness of his gaze, the sincerity in his voice, and the way he seemed to search for reassurance in every interaction. And one rainy afternoon, when the sky had turned a dull gray and the soft patter of raindrops created a rhythm that mirrored the gentle heartbeat of the house, she heard a tentative knock on her door, and when she opened it, Ethan stood there. Holding a small envelope, his fingers wrapped nervously around the edges, eyes flicking up to hers briefly before darting away, and she felt a mix of curiosity and apprehension, sensing that whatever he had brought was significant. A quiet plea for understanding, or perhaps an attempt to communicate feelings he struggled to voice, and she stepped aside, letting him enter, motioning for him to sit at the kitchen table where the warm light spilled over the surface, creating a sense of intimacy and safety, and Ethan hesitated, shifting his weight from one foot to the other, before finally placing the envelope down in front of her, his hand brushing lightly against hers in an unintentional gesture that made her heart skip, and he whispered, almost too softly to hear, "I wrote this." I wasn't sure how else to say it, and Clara nodded, encouraging him silently. The warmth in her eyes meant to reassure him that she would receive whatever he had to offer without judgment, and as she opened the envelope, unfolding the carefully written pages, she found words that were honest, heartfelt, and surprisingly mature, a reflection of the young man's inner world, the complexity of his emotions, and the mixture of remorse, admiration, and tentative longing that he tried to express. And Clara read slowly, absorbing each sentence, feeling the raw honesty resonate deeply within her, a mixture of tenderness, surprise, and a quiet affection forming as she realized how much trust he was placing in her, in their relationship, and in the safe space she had tried to create. And Ethan watched her closely, his posture stiff at first, shoulders tight, but slowly relaxing as he saw her expression soften, a small smile tugging at her lips, and he finally allowed himself to exhale, a long, shaky breath that seemed to release days of pent-up worry and self-doubt. And Clara, touched beyond words, reached across the table, gently placing her hand over his, her fingers warm, grounding him, letting him know without saying it that he was understood, valued, and safe. And the room seemed to contract around them, the soft hum of the refrigerator, the rhythmic tapping of rain on the window, and the dim glow of the kitchen light creating a cocoon of quiet intimacy, a fragile sanctuary where hearts could speak freely. And she spoke softly, carefully, choosing each word with care. "Ethan, this is very brave. I can see how much thought and feeling you've put into this, and I want you to know that I understand you. You've been honest, and that honesty is the most important thing we can have between us." And he looked at her, eyes wide, a mixture of relief and disbelief, as if he could hardly believe that his vulnerability had been met with acceptance rather than judgment. And Clara continued, explaining how everyone carries moments they wish they could undo, mistakes that make them cringe, and yet those moments, when handled with care and understanding, can bring people closer, create bonds that are resilient, and teach lessons about trust, empathy, and emotional courage. And Ethan nodded, absorbing her words like a lifeline, and as the rain continued its gentle percussion outside, he allowed himself to be fully present in the warmth of the kitchen, in the unspoken promise that their relationship was becoming something stronger, more honest, and quietly profound. And Clara noticed the subtle shifts in his body language, the way his fingers relaxed, the tension melting from his shoulders, the light in his eyes softening, signaling that the trust they were building was taking root, that the awkwardness of the earlier incident had evolved into a shared understanding that neither of them had anticipated but both were beginning to appreciate. And she felt a rush of emotion, a mixture of protectiveness, admiration, and a subtle, quiet affection that she had not expected to feel so strongly. And she reminded herself gently that these feelings, though natural, had to be tempered with care, guided by reason and respect for boundaries, because the depth of connection they were forming needed nurturing, not impulsive indulgence. And Ethan, encouraged by her steady presence and the validation of his feelings, spoke again, his voice more confident, steadier than before. "I've been thinking a lot about how I feel. And I wanted to make sure you knew that I appreciate you, Anne. I want to do better, to understand myself, and to be a better part of this family." And Clara's heart swelled, recognizing the sincerity, the self-awareness, and the courage in his words, knowing that these were not empty gestures but meaningful steps toward emotional maturity, and she responded, "Ethan, that's all I could ever hope for. To see you trying, learning, and being honest. That's the heart of what makes a family, and it's the moments like these that shape who we are together." And as they sat there, sharing the quiet warmth, the rain outside acting as a gentle accompaniment, they both felt the subtle shift in their relationship, the awkward tension of past days dissolving into a tender, mutual understanding that carried with it emotional intimacy, compassion, and the recognition that human hearts, when treated with care and honesty, could grow closer through vulnerability rather than retreat. And Clara noticed how Ethan's eyes held a new light, a quiet confidence mingled with lingering shyness, and she understood that this was the beginning of a transformation, a journey in which they would navigate feelings, boundaries, and emotional complexities with growing respect and affection. And she allowed herself a moment to reflect, to feel gratitude for the trust he was placing in her, knowing that fostering that trust required patience, empathy, and constant awareness of each other's needs. And Ethan, sensing her presence and her understanding, reached over subtly, a small, cautious gesture of connection, and Clara responded with a soft squeeze of his hand, a silent acknowledgement that they were in this together. And the envelope, once a symbol of anxiety, had become a bridge, a shared testament to honesty, emotion, and the beginning of a deeper, more meaningful bond. And they continued to talk, words flowing more easily now, laughter mixing with serious reflection, each sentence reinforcing the sense of safety, acceptance, and the gentle blossoming of feelings that were honest, mature, and quietly profound. And Clara realized that despite the awkward beginnings, despite the vulnerability exposed, what had grown between them was a foundation that could support emotional intimacy, personal growth, and the complex, sometimes confusing, but ultimately beautiful experience of human connection. And as the evening faded into night, the rain tapering off to soft drizzles, they both felt a sense of calm, accomplishment, and anticipation, knowing that this moment, fragile yet meaningful, had opened a door to understanding, affection, and the quiet, unspoken bond that would continue to develop in the days to come. And Clara, glancing at Ethan, saw the young man not just as her stepson, but as someone whose heart she respected, whose emotions she cherished, and whose trust she would honor. And Ethan, feeling that recognition, allowed himself to feel seen, appreciated, and quietly cared for in a way that was both gentle and profound. And the night settled around them, wrapping the kitchen, the house, and their hearts in a cocoon of safety, warmth, and the delicate beauty of emotional honesty, leaving both of them with the lingering sense that the awkward incident that had started it all had transformed into something meaningful, tender, and enduring, a testament to the power of vulnerability, empathy, and the courage to share one's feelings with someone willing to understand. And as they finally stood to leave the table, the bond between them had shifted subtly but significantly, a connection built on trust, care, and the quiet, blossoming affection that neither had expected but both now treasured, knowing that this was only the beginning of a journey toward deeper understanding, emotional closeness, and a love that was respectful, gentle, and profoundly human. The following weeks moved with a rhythm of quiet understanding, each day weaving Clara and Ethan closer together in a way that felt natural, unforced, and emotionally profound. As though the earlier awkward incident had laid a foundation for trust that now allowed small gestures, subtle glances, and shared moments to carry a deeper meaning. And Clara noticed how Ethan's presence became more comforting, not in a way that was intrusive or inappropriate, but as a reminder of the bond they were nurturing, a connection rooted in honesty, empathy, and mutual respect. And she found herself looking forward to their conversations, whether about mundane daily tasks, shared interests, or the small emotional victories and struggles he faced. And one late afternoon, as the sun dipped low, casting long golden rays through the living room, they sat together quietly, sipping tea, the room filled with a calm that contrasted sharply with the tension of days past. And Clara felt a gentle warmth spread through her chest, a mix of pride, affection, and a quiet, tender longing that was entirely appropriate to the closeness they were forming. And Ethan, noticing the change in light, remarked softly, almost in awe, "It's so peaceful right now. I feel safe here, like I can just be myself." And Clara smiled, her heart lifting, because she recognized in his words the validation of their shared efforts to build trust, A recognition that both of them had contributed to this fragile yet growing sense of comfort and security. And as they continued to talk, the conversation flowed naturally, weaving between humor, reflection, and moments of vulnerability, with Ethan occasionally glancing at Clara with a quiet intensity, a sign that he valued her guidance, her presence, and the emotional space she had created for him, and Clara, feeling the depth of their connection, reflected on the journey they had undertaken together, from the awkward morning incident to these calm, intimate evenings, realizing that emotional growth, mutual respect, and understanding had transformed their relationship into something meaningful and profoundly human, and she reached out occasionally, lightly touching his hand during moments of shared laughter or subtle acknowledgement, small gestures that reinforced their bond without crossing boundaries, and Ethan responded in kind, a soft squeeze here, a nod of appreciation there, until it became clear that the quiet moments were as important as the conversations, that presence and attention carried weight in ways words alone could not, and one evening, as the rain began again, tapping softly against the windows, they found themselves discussing the importance of family, trust, and honesty. With Ethan admitting, his voice steady but gentle, "I never realized how much these small things could matter, how much talking and understanding each other could change everything," and Clara nodded, recognizing the insight in his words, knowing that this was the reward of patience, empathy, and consistent care, and she replied, "Exactly, Ethan. It's not about avoiding mistakes. It's about how we respond, how we communicate, and how we grow together," and as they spoke, the emotional tension that had once hung heavy over the house was replaced with a lightness, a sense of shared purpose and mutual respect, and she noticed how Ethan's eyes reflected a quiet maturity, a subtle awareness of the delicate balance of feelings, boundaries, and the importance of trust, and she felt a gentle pride in his growth, the way he was learning to navigate emotions thoughtfully, honestly, and with care, and in turn, he seemed to understand her better as well, noticing her patience, her guidance, and the quiet ways she expressed care and affection, and this awareness created a loop of emotional reinforcement, where each small gesture, each kind word, each moment of honesty strengthened the invisible bond between them, making the house feel warmer, the shared spaces lighter, and the simple acts of living together more harmonious, and as days continued, Clara and Ethan developed a subtle rhythm to their interactions, marked by laughter, shared silence, gentle teasing, and quiet understanding, each moment layering upon the last to create a foundation of emotional intimacy, one that was safe, nurturing, and deeply human. And one evening, as they watched the sunset together, the sky painted in fiery oranges and soft pinks, Clara realized how far they had come, from the awkwardness of the initial incident to this calm, reflective moment where hearts were open and trust had taken root, and she felt a swell of emotion, a mixture of love, care, and profound appreciation for the young man who had allowed himself to be vulnerable and had met her guidance with honesty, humility, and respect, and Ethan, sensing the significance of the moment, spoke quietly, "I feel different now. I feel like I understand things better, not just about myself, but about how we can be a family, even with all the awkward and confusing moments," and Clara nodded, her eyes glistening with unspoken emotion, understanding exactly what he meant, knowing that growth often came through discomfort, and that the beauty of human connection was forged in moments of honesty, care, and mutual respect, and as night settled in, they lingered by the window, the city lights twinkling in the distance, a mirror of the warmth and light they had created between them, and Clara felt a gentle satisfaction, a sense of completion not as an end, but as a milestone, a recognition that the journey they had shared was meaningful, and that the foundation they had built could sustain future challenges, joys, and experiences, and Ethan, encouraged by her presence and understanding, leaned back slightly, relaxed and thoughtful, and she felt the subtle, powerful reassurance that they were growing together in a way that was balanced, healthy, and emotionally enriching, and the quiet evening, filled with reflection, shared warmth, and the unspoken acknowledgement of their bond, marked a turning point where past awkwardness had transformed into understanding, past tension into emotional connection, and past uncertainty into a gentle, steadfast trust, and Clara, feeling the serenity of the moment, recognized that love, care, and respect did not always need grand gestures, but flourished in consistency, honesty, and the small, meaningful ways people showed they valued each other, and Ethan, sensing the depth of her care, responded in kind through his attentiveness, thoughtfulness, and the quiet ways he expressed gratitude for the guidance and emotional space she had offered, and together, they found a balance, a rhythm, a quiet harmony where family, understanding, and human connection intertwined to create something lasting and beautiful. And as the night deepened, stars appearing in the clear patches of sky above, they shared a long, reflective silence, hearts aligned in the quiet assurance that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they had the tools, the trust, and the mutual respect to face them together. And Clara, feeling a gentle warmth in her chest, realized that this was the ultimate reward for patience, empathy, and consistent care, a family not perfect in every detail, but strong, nurturing, and full of love, understanding, and emotional richness. And Ethan, glancing at her with a mix of gratitude, admiration, and quiet affection, felt the same, a recognition that the awkward moments, the emotional hurdles, and the tender vulnerabilities had all led them to this space of connection, trust, and subtle, profound love. And as they finally moved away from the window, preparing for bed, a sense of completeness and hopeful anticipation settled over the house, the warmth of their bond a quiet but powerful presence, guiding them forward, reminding them that family, in its truest form, is built not just on shared spaces or responsibilities, but on honesty, care, empathy, and the patient cultivation of understanding that turns even the most awkward, emotional, or challenging moments into milestones of growth, trust, and deeply human connection. And Clara, looking back one last time at Ethan, felt a mixture of pride, affection, and gentle longing, knowing that this journey, while far from over, had reached a beautiful, meaningful stage, one that would carry them both into the future with hearts open, minds clear, and the quiet, enduring knowledge that love, patience, and emotional honesty could transform every challenge into an opportunity for deeper connection, understanding, and lasting emotional intimacy.